Southern Scotland, northern England, seeing those patches of cloud overnight. More solid cloud coming into eastern England, perhaps floating into central southern England for a time. But away from the cloud, temperatures falling, a touch of frost, some fog patches to begin things on Tuesday. The fog gets replaced by sunny spells, and then for the vast majority it's another fine day. A lot of dry weather. Really the only noticeable rain will be across northern and western Scotland, where we keep those drizzly showers. But even the showers in Kent will tend to stay offshore, I think, throughout much of the day, so drier here. And for many it's bright, but I think there'll be areas of cloud floating about, so not entirely sunny. The best of the sunshine through these central and southwestern areas, temperatures reaching 10 Celsius. Into Tuesday evening, where we get those clear skies across southern parts of the country, with light winds as well. Some fairly dense fog patches will form. Could cause some problems on the roads first thing Wednesday. But away from the fog, areas of cloud here and there, and some more persistent rain arriving into Scotland, and by dawn, Northern Ireland as well. Now this weather front will sink south on Wednesday morning, so an hour or two of rain for Scotland and Northern Ireland. It then arrives into northern England and North Wales by lunchtime. To the north, brighter skies, but blustery showers follow, and colder air digs south, so that these showers will be falling as snow over the hills of Scotland. Thursday and Friday bring with them plenty more cold weather and increasingly unsettled weather.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, why are the widespread protests and riots across Europe being largely ignored by the mainstream media as medical freedom is extinguished and health apartheid ushered in under the guise of public health? I'll have a special digest on that shortly before my superstar panel of Carol Malone, Benjamin Butterworth and Esther Kraku weigh in. Is Trump right that Boris is the best Prime Minister since Churchill? Former MP Edwina Curry says Bojo could well end up being the greatest. She'll go head-to-head with the Bo Group's Benjamin Lockname, who says Boris is ineffective in the clash. Is the NHS really on the verge of being overwhelmed this winter, and how can we save it? Positive Professor Carol Sikora investigates. Could Scots face a vaccine passport clampdown? GB News star Neil Oliver weighs in ahead of Sturgeon's ruling tomorrow in The Outsider. Laura Dodsworth is uncancelled, asking, will the mainstream media lead us into COVID dystopia? Have you lost your friends and family over COVID views like rocker Eric Clapton? And is it ever okay to ditch those who don't agree with you? Plus, has the country fallen out of love with Adele after her Hollywood transformation and decision to share intimate details of her private life, including conversations with her son on her new album? We'll debate those headlines and more of today's top stories in the Media Buzz. We'll also bring you a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages and reveal tonight's greatest Britain Union Jackass before the end of the show. This is Dan Wootton tonight. Let's go. Just one thing, more evidence today that sex and gender in society has been brutally erased. To hell with the hard-fought rights of women. The increasingly woke and out-of-touch Brit Awards have scrapped gendered categories, including the British Female Award, which has helped create superstars of the likes of Annie Lennox, Kate Bush, Amy Winehouse and Ellie Goulding. They've given in to the woke mob who say non-binary stars like Sam Smith and Demi Lovato felt excluded. It's a terrible disservice to women all over the world. And can you imagine what's next? No Best Actress at the Oscars and no Head Girl at schools, no doubt. Meanwhile, J.K. Rowling, who has spoken up against this exact sort of madness, has been targeted. She tweeted today, "Last Friday, my family's address was posted on Twitter by 3 activist actors who took pictures of themselves in front of our house, carefully positioning themselves to ensure that our address was visible. I've received so many death threats, I could paper the house with them, and I haven't stopped speaking out. Perhaps, and I'm just throwing it out there, the best way to prove your movement isn't a threat to women is to stop stalking, harassing and threatening us." We'll debate the Brits' terrible decision and much more later in the Media Buzz with my superstar panel, the columnist and broadcaster Carol Malone, senior reporter at the iNewspaper Benjamin Butterworth and the social commentator Esther Kraku. But first, the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Good evening. Mourners have today been paying their last respects to the murdered politician Sir David Amess. The father of 5's coffin was draped in the Union flag and carried to his funeral by Southend firefighters. Sir David was stabbed to death while holding a surgery in Leigh-on-Sea in October. The Home Secretary said today there's no silver bullet for solving the migrant crisis. Priti Patel took urgent questions from MPs in the Commons over the increasing numbers of people trying to cross the English Channel. The Shadow Home Secretary, Nick Thomas-Symonds, accused the Home Secretary of empty rhetoric and broken promises. 3 times as many people have come to the UK this year than last year. The government's last-minute proposals to cap care costs will hit the poorest pensioners. That's from Labour as they thrash out changes to the health and care bill in Parliament. MPs on both sides are saying the plans do appear unfair, but the government says they're a significant improvement and will increase the number of people eligible for state support. In the United States, at least 5 people have died and more than 40 more have been injured after a car ploughed into a Christmas parade. 39-year-old Darrell Brooks has been charged with intentional homicide. Police say he was fleeing a domestic disturbance when he allegedly crashed into the crowd. The victims are aged between 52 and 81, but 6 children remain in a critical condition in hospital.
18 kids were brought to our Children's Emergency Department, ranging from ages 3 to 16 years of age, which include 3 sets of siblings. Injuries ranged from facial abrasions to broken bones to serious head injuries. 6 of these patients were sent to the operating room last night, and 2 additional patients are undergoing surgeries today.
We'll keep you updated on that story. Here in the UK, energy provider Bulb is going into administration. The company's blaming the rising cost of gas prices and a challenging market. It says it will still provide, though, a normal service to its 1.7 million customers. More than 20 providers have collapsed in recent months. And as you were hearing there from Dan, gender categories will be scrapped at the next Brit Awards. Instead of Artist of the Year and International Artist of the Year, is going to replace female and male categories. The show's organisers say they want to focus on artists' work instead of how they identify. You're right up to date. I'm back in an hour. Back to Dan.
Violence during any form of protest is completely unacceptable. You know I have been consistent on that, be it BLM, anti-lockdown or Extinction Rebellion rallies. But the shocking and widespread riots across Europe this weekend, shamelessly being largely ignored by the mainstream media, are an inevitable consequence of medical freedom being extinguished and health apartheid ushered in under the guise of COVID public health. Surely this civil unrest erupting in Vienna, Brussels, throughout the Netherlands and closer to home in London and Belfast should be leading the news over the world. When the murder of George Floyd sparked new Black Lives Matter protests in the US last summer, it's all TV wanted to talk about. Despite the horrible murder having very little to do with life in the UK, officially one of the least racist countries in the world where the police are largely unarmed. The rage over government overreach through vaccine mandates and passports is fast creating a two-tier society that we may never be able to reverse. Yet the vast majority of the media and political elite are looking away. The question is not that the vaccine is largely a force for good. I have been open about the fact I have exercised my personal choice to be jabbed, taking into account my overall health. But I respect everyone making their own call without judgment. And certainly without the threat of losing their livelihood, freedoms, or from February in Austria being fined over £3,000 for breaking the law. To fundamentally alter the way we treat modern medicine by starting to enforce procedures on the individual in a free society is not just wrong, it's terrifying. Where does this end? Enforced abortions for pregnant women carrying babies with Down syndrome? Enforce stomach stapling for the clinically obese? And don't laugh and suggest this is all some mad conspiracy theory when the thought of democratic nations like Germany and Austria mandating a vaccine on its entire population, or Wales stopping the unjabbed going to a cinema, was also, not that long ago, considered a laughable conspiracy. Sajid Javid this weekend insisted the British government will not go down this path.
Do you ever accept compulsory vaccination in the UK?
No. I mean, it's not, I don't, it's up to Austria, other countries to decide what they need to do. We are fortunate in this country that although we have vaccine hesitancy, it's a lot lower than we're seeing in other places in Europe. But also, I just think at a practical level, taking a vaccine should be a positive choice. It should be something that if people are a bit reluctant, that we should work with them and encourage them.
But that is slightly disingenuous, given we are already experimenting with such an authoritarian policy in social care and the NHS refusing to take into account scientific realities like natural immunity. Meanwhile, in Australia, army personnel is now being used to transfer close contacts of COVID cases in their Northern Territory to state-run facilities.
That means residents of Minjari and Rockall no longer have the 5 reasons to leave their home. They can only leave for medical treatment in an emergency or if required by law. It's highly likely that more residents will be transferred to Howard Springs today, either as positive cases or close contacts. We've already identified 38 close contacts in Minjari, and that number will go up. Those 38 are being transferred now. I contacted the Prime Minister last night. We are grateful for the support of about 20 ADF personnel as well as army trucks to assist with the transfer of positive cases and close contacts and to support the communities.
Just think about that for a second. If you happen to be a contact of a COVID case, you're being shipped off by the army to a government-run facility. How has a civilised democratic country gone so mad that this sort of behaviour is being treated as even slightly normal? Meanwhile, our mainstream broadcast media cravenly wants to follow suit, failing to accept that our Big Bang reopening on Freedom Day means there should be no going back, ever. But take this discussion on the Jeremy Vine show last week, where the concept of the UK following Austria and creating a permanent snitch culture where the vaccinated call the police on the unvaccinated leaving their homes was considered a realistic proposition.
Now, I have a lot of sympathy with what they're going to do in Austria, because I cannot understand for the life of me why people believe this rubbish on the internet, the anti-vax propaganda. It is deranged. We know there's figures from the Office of National Statistics that say, what is it? You're 32,000 times more likely to die if you've not been double jabbed from COVID. There's no possible reason, unless you've got underlying health symptoms, not to have the jab. But my worry about doing it is, how do you enforce it? Do you stop everybody in the street? Who's going to stop people in the street? We don't have enough police officers on the beat anyway. So how would you make it work in Britain?
Well, you'd do it through snitches, wouldn't you, Storm? That worked.
Makes me uneasy.
It worked in lockdown. We had people saying, "Get round, we can hear a karaoke."
Now let me repeat the facts for the folk like this who seem to have been struck down with COVID derangement syndrome. The UK, we're now an 80% jabbed society, one of the leaders in the world, and a quarter of us already have been boosted. Meanwhile, COVID has an infection fatality rate of 0.096% here in the UK, increasingly comparable to the flu. If you were talking about locking down the country again, or locking up your fellow citizens who have exercised a medical choice different to your own, then you're the one with the problem. But to respond now, my superstar panel, the Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, senior reporter at the newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and the social commentator Esther Kraku. Esther, your thoughts?
Oh, I think we both know my thoughts. You know, I can't believe we're at this point, just because I know it's going to get worse. I mean, when in your monologue, when you said, what's next, forced abortions, they laughed, right? They were like, that's...
Yeah, we are laughing.
But
yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah, we're laughing.
It's a medical procedure you're literally forcing people to have. If this is my argument. If you said you have to have a negative COVID test to access the same things that vaccinated people have, I could understand that, right? If to access, cinemas or whatever, I can get that, right? Just about. But to give people no other choice to live life normally than to put a foreign substance into their body and to say, oh, I did it, so you have to do it, as if we all took some sort of social pact. I mean... Can I
just say, that's not happening in this country.
But it's happening in democracy.
Can I just say, it's happening in Europe. And
but it is happening, Carol, in Wales and Scotland.
Let me finish. In Europe...
And Northern Ireland.
The three countries at the top of the vaccine refusal list are Austria, Switzerland and Germany. And that's because, and the German health minister said today, we are currently experiencing a pandemic of the unvaccinated. This is a guy called Jens Spahn. And he said the fourth wave has happened because too few people have had the vaccine. An ONS report said for this country, the unvaccinated mortality rate here is 32 times higher than the unvaccinated mortality rate is 30 times higher than the vaccinated rate. The WHO has warned there could be 500,000 more deaths before March next year if people don't get vaccinated. So they are the facts, Dan.
Hold on,
not
ask?
people, not vaccine apartheid.
Can I just ask,
we
what
are not
the demographic of people that are refusing the vaccine? What do we have an age demographic? Because it's...
Well, I don't have it, Esther. Have you got it?
No, but I'm assuming it's mostly young.
It's younger people, it's ethnically diverse people, it tends to be working class people on the whole.
But it's also people who have been brainwashed by propaganda, both on social media, and we'll be talking about that later with Eric Clapton. It's people who have been brainwashed by false claims, things like it causes autism, things like it affects women's fertility. There is no data that exists to say that happened. So vaccines are one of the greatest tools to fight this virus. And it doesn't cure it, no, but what it does stop is death and it stops hospitalizations.
Can I ask you a question?
Let me just say this one thing. Only 6% of hospital beds in this country now are occupied with COVID patients.
But
That's not a lot.
If someone refused or was hesitant to not get the vaccine because they just said, this vaccine hasn't been out long enough for me to trust.
Oh, well, we all think that.
No.
We all think that, but we all did it anyway.
Hold on, but that's an argument that's like a groupthink argument, right? That's say follow the rest of us that did it because we were fine. But what would you actually say to someone? Say, treat me as an individual. My concern is this vaccine, because I know a lot of black people who are not getting it.
In a pandemic, it's not about individuals, it's about
But
society.
that's the point, though. We should put it back to the individual.
Why?
Because that's how you get more people.
Because, Carol, that's a fundamental principle of our society.
Treating them like
when the unvaccinated are the ones in hospital, in hospital, the majority of people
their
are
choice.
They're
aware of the
choice
risk.
to die. Yes, but they might infect other people while
Okay, but how
they
would
die.
you put a good individual-minded argument to a person that doesn't want to get this vaccine because they said, quite frankly, in as much as medicine is fantastic...
There is no individual argument of pandemic.
But then
it's a global pandemic. And look what's happening in those countries in Europe where people haven't been vaccinated.
But guess what? We haven't signed a social contract to take the vaccine. No one held hands and said, kumbaya.
No, they didn't say kumbaya.
We're going to take the vaccine together.
But in countries, the fact is, countries in Europe that haven't been vaccinated, the least vaccinated countries, in Romania last week, in one day, 560 people died.
They chose not to get the vaccine.
Oh, so that's all right. Let them all die.
Benjamin, I want to ask you about this idea of mandating the vaccine. Do you not understand the point that I'm making? And I say this as someone who has made a personal choice to be vaccinated, by the way, even though I don't think it's anyone's business, but I make that point because I think it's part of this argument. Do you not understand that that completely changes the relationship that we have with medical professionals, that we have with our own body, and that's why people are so angry about this?
Look, the situation in Austria, which is introducing this from February next year, is that their COVID cases have gone through the roof, their deaths, their serious
But ours
ill
did
has gone
too
through the
earlier
roof.
in the year.
But we know, but ours in terms of serious sickness hasn't been doing that, thank God.
But Carol, the cases have always been
Hang on, I haven't
through the
answered your
roof.
question.
Yes.
I don't think it's right for the state to actually force you, for it to be a criminal offence to not get the
neither.
vaccination, because it puts the state in a strange position.
Then why aren't you speaking out, both of you, about what's going on in Austria?
What I'm speaking out about...
Why aren't you speaking out against it?
You said before this has been largely ignored in the media. No, it hasn't. The Mail had 2 pages in it today. The Sun
I'm talking
had
about the
it,
broadcast
or the tabloids
media.
had it.
I'm talking about the broadcast media. The corrupt broadcast media.
The ones that conveniently forgot about the terrorist bomb in Liverpool.
It led the BBC News channel throughout Saturday, and I know it because I was on it, and it was on every hour. It was leading with protests in the Netherlands, so it's simply not true. And the truth is that I want to know why you and Esther are so desperate to defend the unvaccinated, because if more people were like them, we'd
Benjamin,
all be
what I'm doing is I am defending the right of the individual to make whatever decision they want over their own body and make whatever decision they want about their own medical procedures. I don't care that we're in a pandemic. It doesn't mean that we take away human rights.
Well, you don't care, but the people who are worried about getting COVID do care. People, we've all taken the vaccine. We know it's a new vaccine. We don't know what's going to do. It's going to do 10 years down the line. We don't.
But some people do care.
We've done this for us because we care about the rest of the population.
Hold on. Please explain something to me. Please explain something to me. This vaccine doesn't stop people transmitting the virus.
We know that.
Hold on.
It does stop some people. It reduces the numbers
Ireland
that
is
are
a
transmitted.
largely vaccinated society, and their cases are through the roof.
And so is Gibraltar.
So we can establish... Hold on. Because I want to ask you a question.
Esther, you stated something that isn't true. You said it doesn't stop you passing it on. Well,
it doesn't
in
stop.
some cases it does, because it reduces the chances.
But
so there are instances where people don't pass it on
in,
because they've been
In
vaccinated.
Ireland, the Deputy Prime Minister, Leo Varadkar, he blamed the unvaccinated this week for the soaring cases there. He said it's the unvaccinated people causing much of the trouble. He said they're the reason why...
much of the trouble. Imagine talking about
Let me finish the quote.
We're not getting a job.
We're adults.
At risk.
And he said they are the reason for the new restrictions being put in place.
To be honest, I don't think you two understand how vaccinations work. You have the vaccination to protect yourself. And you are protected, Carol, as a result of vaccine from hospitalisation or death.
I'm losing my voice. I've got a bad throat. We were told last year, at the height of the pandemic, to have the vaccination to protect the NHS and protect others. I remember us being told that by the scientists, by Boris and by many politicians.
Yeah, they told us a lot of things. Did you believe it all?
Did you believe 2 weeks to slow down the curve? Did you believe that?
What?
Did you believe 2 weeks to slow down the curve?
Are you saying vaccines don't work? Because
I'm
otherwise
saying
your point
vaccines-
is pointless.
What I am saying is the main point of the vaccines is to slow down
you
and
can
to
compare
reduce
apples compared to what you
hospitalizations.
like.
There is very little evidence to suggest that actually being vaccinated stops you from passing the virus on to other people.
There's
It just
lots
stops
of
you from
evidence
getting
that it
sick.
And what I'm
the
saying
chances.
is that to try and malign, I'll use that word, malign these protesters as anti-vaxxers. And you
They
did
are
that over the
anti-vax.
weekend,
And they're
Benjamin.
violent. They are. That's
You
why.
did that over the weekend, and you are wrong, and you were despicable for doing that.
No, I'm
because
not.
I am vaccinated, and I am with these people. So you cannot brand them anti-vaxxers. It's a lie. You are lying.
I can brand them anti-vaxxers because I was watching their protest signs go by, so many of which denied the use of vaccines.
Many of which.
And do you know what, frankly...
many of which.
Talk about how
what about the people who are against
Dan, let me
vaccine
get a word in
passports?
edgeways. You talk about how it's an individual decision.
Yes.
Well, it's going to get a bit riskier during winter, and if we have a situation where the hospitals get filled with unvaccinated people, that means that if your elderly relative has a heart attack and can't get a hospital can't get a bed in hospital and therefore can't be treated because someone unvaccinated has selfishly taken it when they could have stopped that problem.
right.
That
Do
is
you know
an
what?
issue for
I
us all.
feel for
and
you,
frankly, Dan, that's
Benjamin,
why the unvaccinated
I
should be
feel
under
for
lockdown
you.
if we
I
get that
genuinely
situation.
feel for you because you've got COVID derangement syndrome. You've got a lot of anxiety.
you guys
You've
are
got a
the
lot of
deranged. You
anxiety.
guys are the
No.
deranged ones.
You both
I don't
have a lot of anxiety
I
over
have
what's
science.
happened the past 2 years, but you've got to start
just
looking
believe
at
in
the facts.
individual
You've
rights.
had
God
the
punish me.
vaccine, and I do
Dan,
too.
I just read out a whole load of facts at the start of this, and I told you which countries are having the big upsurge at the moment.
80% of our population is vaccinated. And do you know what? One of the ways that we've got there is
think
by
people are
trusting
selfish,
the individual.
Dan?
And these vaccine passports and these mandates.
But we haven't
are
got vaccine
absolutely,
passports, Dan.
Well, we do in
We
Scotland,
haven't. Well,
we do in
yes,
Northern
but we
Ireland,
don't
we
here.
do in Wales.
And that's
But
what we
we're
don't have.
GB News,
We don't
Carol, we're
have.
about all of the United
Westminster
Kingdom, and they
government-
haven't been
the
ruled out by
Westminster
England
government has
either.
not
They haven't been ruled out by
vaccine
England either.
passports or mandatory,
And in fact,
they
there's
won't.
an announcement coming from Nicola Sturgeon on tomorrow. Carol Malone,
No.
Benjamin Butterworth,
Oh, he smiled.
Esther
He smiled
Krakow,
at us now.
my
We told you from
superstar
there.
panel. It's a feisty one. They're here all night. Coming up, will any amount of money be enough for NHS bosses? And is the health service really on the verge of collapse? Our positive professor Carol Sikora weighs in on that one. But up next in The Clash, is Donald Trump correct that Boris Johnson is the best Prime Minister since Winston Churchill? Former Tory Minister Edwina Currie goes head-to-head with the Bow Group's Benjamin Loughnane on that. But I want to know what you think. Dan at gbnews.uk, or you can tweet me at gbnews. We've got a poll running there as well. Back in 2.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panelists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
And it's time now for The Clash. Former US President Donald Trump has gushed over Boris Johnson, describing him in a new book, Our Journey Together, as one of a kind and a fantastic leader of the United Kingdom. But crucially, he added, and here's the controversial part, he will go down as the best PM since Winston Churchill. But some might doubt that after Boris had a bit of a disastrous moment speaking to the CBI today.
Forgive me. Forgive me. Hands up anyone who's been to Peppa Pig World. Not enough. I was a bit hazy what I would find at Peppa Pig World, but I loved it. And Peppa Pig World is very much my kind of place. It has very safe streets, discipline in schools. It even prompted journalists to grill him Sleepy Joe style on his state of mind.
In your speech to the CBI, you lost your notes, you lost your place, you went off on a tangent about Peppa Pig. Frankly, is everything okay?
I think that people got the vast majority of the points I wanted to make, and I thought it went over well.
Look, we all have a bad day at the office, don't we? And I think Boris is actually a brilliant speaker. This was just one of those ones, and I feel his pain. But earlier today, I sent my reporter Caroline Gawley to the streets to ask the great British public if they agree with Donald Trump's claims that Bojo is the best PM since Churchill.
Do you think Boris Johnson is the best Prime Minister since Churchill?
Definitely not. No. Definitely not.
Tell me why.
Because he's egotistical, he's one-track minded, and he only thinks about himself.
You do?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Why do you think that?
Because he did many good things to the country.
Because he's very unfair and he doesn't think about everyone equally, and he just does what...
He hasn't really done any good to the country. I don't know what he's done.
He's very intelligent. He's doing great things for UK.
I think he is an egoist. I think he believes he's Winston Churchill, because he wrote a book about Winston Churchill. I think he's incompetent.
It's not an easy country to control. So overall, I can't think of anyone else right now that would be doing better than him.
I can't trust him as far as you can throw him, to be honest.
And why is that?
Just lie after lie after lie, and then a U-turn after U-turn.
You like him?
I do like him, yeah. I don't know why, but I do.
So do you agree with Trump? Is Boris the best PM since Churchill? You can vote now in my poll at GBNews on Twitter. Email me to dan@gbnews.uk, and I'll read out some of your messages after former Tory MP Edwina Currie and Benjamin Loughnane, research fellow at the Bow Group, battle it out. So, Edwina, you actually don't think what Trump is saying is ludicrous, right? You think he has the chance to potentially go on and become the greatest PM since Thatcher?
Well,
Sorry,
Daniel,
since
What
Churchill.
the former American president actually wrote, mostly in capital letters in his own handwriting, was that Boris will go down as the best prime minister since Churchill. So he's not saying he is now. He's saying basically when history comes to judge him many years from now. I mean, my feeling is that probably Trump entirely forgot Margaret Thatcher, or maybe had never heard of Margaret Thatcher. That's at least possible, given it was Donald Trump. And that, in fact, the British people in a poll a couple of years ago said that the greatest prime minister since the war was Margaret Thatcher, who was in office for 11 years, which is, 9 years more than Boris has managed so far. I mean, give him a decade, and yeah, he may well rank up there with the truly greats. I don't think he's quite done it yet, but I think he's got every potential, every chance.
Benjamin Loughnane, why do you disagree with that? I mean, he's the bloke who delivered Brexit. He's got us through this pandemic. The public overwhelmingly support him, regardless of what the Westminster bubble might think.
Yeah, I think there are two Borises. There's the Boris who was the mayor, and also that carried on into his Brexit spirit in the 2019 election. And then there's the Boris we saw at COP26, who's a totally different character. He has totally different policies. He seems to believe in totally different things. And I think a lot of what that's influenced by is who surrounds him and who he's listening to at any given time. I think that he does have some potential to do great things, but at the moment, given the way that things are going, I think it's absolutely farcical to suggest he's anywhere near being in the same class as Winston Churchill. You know, Churchill was a great leader, and not only a great leader, but a great leader under pressure in the darkest hour of this country's history. And Boris, I mean, you know, obviously we've had 2 bad years, but he hasn't shown the same character under pressure that Churchill was able to show. I think in general, comparing politicians from today with politicians from 50 or 60, 70, 80 years ago is an exercise in futility, because the standard has dropped so much in the past 50 or 60 years that we really are not seeing the same class.
Edwina, is that true? Or is it actually just that the media pressure, the 24-hour news cycle, social media, puts so much more scrutiny on our prime ministers compared to Churchill's day?
Well, it was just the same, I think, back in the day. It's just it was done by daily newspapers, and the London Evening Standard would have 3 or 4 editions every day. So that scrutiny was there all the time. No, I don't think social media makes that much difference. I must say, I think Benjamin talked complete nonsense. In fact, I would use a slightly ruder word about it, saying that the standard has gone down in 50 years. Goodness, you sound like the old woman. I'm the old woman, and you sound like what the heck? I mean, goodness me. Let's just recap a little bit, if I may. You know, Boris's government was elected to do Brexit, and they did it within a matter of weeks. They got it done.
When Theresa May had failed,
it will be a tremendous success. We're seeing already that this country has got tremendous growth. We have low unemployment. We are in a position of much considerable strength compared with what's been going on in Europe. We've seen the vaccine rollout, which has been astonishing. A lot of those vaccines actually produced in our country from Oxford University, my alma mater. I couldn't be more proud. And a great deal of that was a question of judgment that had to be done at pace in the darkness and a fog of complete lack of knowledge about exactly what we were dealing with. It's been done extremely well. And that's a government that Boris has led for, 2.5 years, well, 2 years effectively, since he actually had a majority. We don't know exactly what's going to go on from here, but I would say I think he's got every chance. I thought COP26 in Glasgow was quite a triumph. You know, we could easily have found it just a great big talk fest with nothing much happening. But in fact, we've moved on. The argument is accepted about global warming. In this house here, I've got solar panels on the roof. I've got an electric car. And I'm, dyed-in-the-wool Tory.
And Boris has now reinvented himself as a Green Prime Minister, hasn't he? I mean, Benjamin, just pick up a bit on this idea that folk in the Westminster bubble seem so desperate to bring Boris down all the time. They're always predicting his demise. But the public love this guy.
Yeah, the one thing that makes me sort of have some sympathy for Boris is who his enemies are, because, I have to say he's better than them. But nonetheless, he still needs to get on top of things like the Channel crossings, which for 2 years have gone numbers increasing up and up and up, and he hasn't seemed to have done anything about it. He's barely even spoken about it. He's barely even acknowledged the fact that it's happening. And if he wants to go down as a great Churchillian leader who does well in times of crisis, he needs to get on top of things like that and ensure that they don't happen. Another area where I have some sympathy for Boris is that in London, things are relatively free. I mean, I've travelled. I've been in, I think, 5 countries over the past couple of months. And I have to say, every time I return to London, I think, wow, this is so much different to the rest of the world. But obviously, that needs to be maintained and balanced out. And if he gives in to things like what some people are calling for, like mandatory vaccinations and vaccine passports, I think he'll go down in history as having caved. So I think there are ways that he can redeem himself and go down in history as a great Prime Minister. But at the moment, things seem to be moving in the wrong direction from my perspective. And I think someone like Trump at the moment has a lot of reasons to be pro-Boris and to say these things, because he wants to run again in 2024. And a good way of making sure that he might win in 2024 is keeping some of these world leaders on side and ensuring that they all like him, so that when he, has these ambitions of becoming the president once again, he has those people in place around the world to support that.
Edwina, final word to you. What do you think Boris has to do over the next few years to ensure that he has a legacy to challenge Churchill's?
He needs to step up the people in his office. It is absolute nonsense that you have a pile of paper that you lose your place in. That's ridiculous. Properly put together speeches, ring binder, whatever. He needs to have people in his office who are talking to what amounts now in Parliament to both sides of the party. So you've got the older, safer seats in the south and the east of the country where, those people, I think, sitting on 20,000 majorities, have certain views and they're not happy about being told that they can't be paid lobbyists. So they are pretty cross with him for that. Where I live, up in what used to be called the Red Wall, we have a lot of keen, young, very, very keen supporters of both Brexit and of levelling up and getting change up in the north of England. And they sometimes feel that they get neglected by those of you down in London. You forget where we are. You treat us all as oiks. We are not oiks. We are voters. And we have a very strong view on how things should go forward. If Boris can improve communication and learn to balance those two groups, improve his PR a little bit on something like, for example, Northern Powerhouse. You spend 90 billion pounds and you don't get good PR, that means your PR is a bit faulty. If he can do all of that, then I think he will go on, he'll win the next election, 2024, and eventually we will all come to admire him, including Benjamin.
Former Tory Minister Edwina Currie, and before that, Benjamin Loughnane, Research Fellow at the Bow Group. Thank you both so much. So who do you agree with? Well, Chris on Twitter says, not sure. He started off on the side of the common people, but as time has gone on, he's moved away from the worries of normal people and become more woke and detached. Lee on Twitter says, I had high hopes, but I think Michael Gove would have done a better job. And Jackie via email says, Bojo is an utter disgrace. He's down with the useless Major. He's down there with the useless Major, the hopeless Cameron, and the forgettable May. To compare him to Churchill is illiterate and stupid. And your verdict now in, only 18% of you agree with Donald Trump that Boris Johnson is the best Prime Minister since Winston Churchill, while 82% of you completely disagree. Coming up, as Eric Clapton says he's lost friends and family for his COVID views, is it fair to ditch loved ones over virus disagreements? But first, our health service seems to be constantly cash-strapped, but just how imperiled is the NHS? The positive professor, Carol Sikora, joins me after the break to discuss that.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Back now with the positive professor, Carol Sikora. And with the changing of the seasons comes the familiar warnings in the mainstream media that the NHS is in danger of total collapse during the dark days of winter. Inevitably, this doom-mongering ends at the same place, calls for yet more money for a wasteful service that is already set to land an extra £18 billion skimmed from our paychecks. Writing in the Daily Mail, Angus Dalgleish, Professor of Oncology at St George's Hospital Medical School, have said there is actually no justice for panic, adding, with the BBC acting as collaborators, NHS managers are indulging in a crude form of political blackmail. Carol Sikora, do you agree?
I know Gus Dalgleish very well. He's an oncologist like myself, and he's right. Every year, Dan, I was a medical student 50 years ago. I was a bright boy at Cambridge. I came down. My first clinical job as a medical student was at Central Middlesex Hospital. The hospital was closed. It was January. It was closed for everything other than the flu. And there were patients on ventilators. This was winter pressures. That was my first introduction to winter pressures. And like Gus, who's about the same age as me, we've seen it every year there are winter pressures. And it's a lack of competence in having a system that can deal with older people that have chest infections, which is all it is. Nothing to do with COVID. It happens every year. COVID won't make it any better, of course, because you add to the winter pressures with it. But it's not the end of the world. And at the moment, I looked at the data today, 850 people were admitted with COVID-related illness today to hospital. There are 8,000 people in beds. That's less than 6% of the total number of beds in the NHS. So it's not the end of the world. And like you, I do get fed up with the mainstream media, the BBC especially, saying it's doom, it's gloom, but it happens every year. This is nothing new.
And 40%, Carol, believe it or not, 40% of all budgeted day-to-day state spending now goes to the NHS. So surely the answer isn't more money, it has to be better management.
The biggest problem we've got in society is not ill people, it's recovering ill people. They get better, they get antibiotics, oxygen in hospital, but there's nowhere for them to go. They can't go back to the care homes because care homes have no nursing care, no real nursing care. They have healthcare assistants that do it, but you can't send someone on lots of pills back, and they can't stay in the hospital. Where do they go? Families won't take them back in many cases now. They do in Asian families. It's amazing the difference. I mean, Hammersmith, where I've spent most of my life, has a lot of Asian population from Southall and to the west, and the families always take their relatives back. They want to do that. But I'm sorry, but the standard problem is that families won't take people back, care homes won't take them back, so they have to stay in hospital. And this is a disaster because we can't get people out and clear the way for new patients to come in. And that causes the problem. Every winter, stopping surgery, stopping routine investigations because of this. If we could change this, if we could have step-down accommodation, it would change it dramatically. And that's what we need to build. Other countries have it, we just don't have it.
Interesting. And Carol, it does feel like with all of this BBC cheerleading and the government seemingly buying into this idea that the NHS is untouchable, it's actually going to make the inefficiencies worse. I think we at least have to have honest conversations about where the NHS is getting it wrong, because otherwise they're just going to take more money into this black hole and not actually improve.
You know, I'm like a heretic, and Gus Dalgleish is a bit of a heretic that wrote the article in the Daily Mail, because we say, look, there are better ways of doing this. We can change the system. It's not just about money. And when you get the chief executive, Amanda Pritchard, 2 weeks ago telling us little stories, porky pies, about how many people are in the hospital now because of COVID, 14 times the number that were there last year. This is just absolutely not true. And she knows it's not true. She was fed the wrong information. I think the way forward is to let's be honest about it and let's try and make the service better, work out what the real problem is. If it is getting older people out of hospital, let's work a solution to do that. It wouldn't cost an awful lot of money, but just throwing billions at it is not going to solve anything.
Karol Sikora, brilliant stuff. His solutions on how to save the crisis-ridden NHS this winter. Karol will speak again next week. But coming up, has Adele fallen out of favour with the British public after going Hollywood? I'll debate that with my superstar panel and bring you the first of tomorrow's front pages in the Media Buzz. But next, will Sturgeon doom Scotland to vaccine COVID passports for pubs, cinemas and theatres? GB News' own Neil Oliver shares his thoughts as tonight's outsider straight after the break.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello again. High pressure is keeping things fine. During the next 24 hours for most of us, there'll be frost and fog, especially in the south on Tuesday morning, but replaced soon enough by sunny spells. Here's the area of high pressure. It's keeping Atlantic weather fronts and low pressure at bay for the time being, centred over Ireland, but around the periphery of that high, some additional cloud for northern and eastern parts of the UK. And you can see that across northern Scotland and increasingly Northern Ireland, central and southern Scotland, northern England, seeing those patches of cloud overnight. More solid cloud coming into eastern England, perhaps floating into central southern England for a time. But away from the cloud, temperatures falling, a touch of frost, some fog patches to begin things on Tuesday. The fog gets replaced by sunny spells, and then for the vast majority it's another fine day. A lot of dry weather. Really the only noticeable rain will be across northern and western Scotland where we keep those drizzly showers. But even the showers in Kent will tend to stay offshore, I think, throughout much of the day, so drier here. And for many it's bright, but I think there'll be areas of cloud floating about, so not entirely sunny. The best of the sunshine through these central and southwestern areas, temperatures reaching 10 Celsius. Into Tuesday evening, where we get those clear skies across southern parts of the country, with light winds as well. Some fairly dense fog patches will form. Could cause some problems on the roads first thing Wednesday. But away from the fog, areas of cloud here and there, and some more persistent rain arriving into Scotland, and by dawn, Northern Ireland as well. Now this weather front will sink south on Wednesday morning, so an hour or two of rain for Scotland and Northern Ireland. It then arrives into Northern England and North Wales by lunchtime. To the north, brighter skies but blustery showers follow, and colder air digs south so that these showers will be falling as snow over the hills of Scotland. Thursday and Friday bring with them plenty more cold weather and increasingly unsettled weather.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back. GB News star Neil Oliver is tonight's outsider. Tomorrow, Neil and millions of other Scots will learn if they'll be forced to show proof of vaccination to use pubs, cinemas, theatres or gyms. Nicola Sturgeon expected to make a final call on whether to expand the current vaccine passport scheme beyond nightclubs to other hospitality venues, having warned this is the only way to avoid more significant restrictions.
Presiding Officer, the final mitigation measure I want to talk about today is the COVID certification scheme. It is the strong view of the Scottish Government that this, together with the other measures still in place, makes an important and proportionate contribution to stemming COVID transmission. We're also considering whether an expansion of the scheme to cover more settings would be justified and prudent, given the current state of the pandemic. Again, let me stress that we have not at this stage taken a decision to extend the reach of the scheme. However, to allow us to engage openly with businesses in the coming days about the pros, cons and practicalities, I can confirm that the kinds of settings that might be in scope would be indoor cinemas, theatres and some other licensed and hospitality premises.
Now, despite releasing a 70-page dossier that her critics say provides no evidence of vaccine passports having any significant impact, Sturgeon continues to dangle that threat over the heads of her people. Neil, why is Sturgeon still threatening Scots?
I think your guess is as good as mine, Dan, except that I would say I think it's irresistible. It's for a person in power, like a First Minister, like a Prime Minister, these COVID restrictions give them ongoing access to authority and power over people's lives. They've had it for the last 20 months or whatever, and I think it's demonstrably proving impossible for any of them to give up. They keep on giving themselves the background to do this. In Scotland and elsewhere, the testing, if you keep on testing healthy people and getting positive results, you will always be able to have the justification that's required to, extend restrictions, make more places off limits to those who aren't carrying health papers. But I think, in short, in answer to your question, I think it's power, and it's irresistible for characters like these politicians. Someone like Nicola Sturgeon, obviously, her special circumstances are that she exists, and her party, the Scottish National Party, exists to break Scotland out of the United Kingdom. She's been singularly impotent and unable to deliver that, and so she needs other things to underscore her position, to make herself relevant, and threatening or promising to extend the COVID restrictions is just to be seen to be doing something and being a powerful person.
And Neil, strangely, the mainstream media, or at least the majority, especially of the broadcast media, are looking away to what's going on across Europe. And I can't believe that. I mean, this is health apartheid. There are literally tens of thousands of people on the streets. Why is it that when those people were protesting the murder of George Floyd in the US, it was all over the broadcast media? When they're protesting a fundamental right as a human being in a democratic society to choose what medical procedure you have, it's almost been ignored.
Well, a central plank of the mainstream broadcast media's narrative is always taking any opportunity to suggest that large proportions of populations are in favour of this restriction and extensions to this and more lockdowns, and finding polls that say that the unvaccinated should be locked down. Now, the protests, as you say, London and in many European capitals and across towns and villages as well. It's not even just in the big population centres that these protests, these peaceful protests, are going on. But they run counter. The mainstream media don't want to, and the authorities don't want to acknowledge the reality that millions of people are up on their hind legs protesting against this, because they are pushing a message that, let's face it, after all, we're all in favour of restrictions, and I don't think that's the case. You can't overlook the fact that I've said it before, but big pharma, big tech, big mainstream media, if you follow their lines up to their ultimate owners, you arrive at BlackRock, Vantage, State Street, Vanguard, State Street. They're all the lines go up to the same point. So the message about the narrative around COVID, around the pandemic, around the vaccines, and in relation to these protests that they're not covering, it's all coming from the sharp end of a pyramid of power. And the narrative that we're hearing is being driven by the same people that are in favour of the vaccines, that are in favour of greater control and surveillance over our lives. In many ways, it's not mysterious.
Neil, they also seem to be in favour of our government taking a more authoritarian approach out of Westminster, which I think is quite extraordinary given what the population has been put through the past 20 months. But we see it, Neil, in broadcasts like Good Morning Britain or the Jeremy Vine Show. I played a clip earlier where it's been discussed almost as something completely natural and normal that Brits might long-term snitch on their unvaccinated neighbours if they dare to leave the house. I mean, why is the media taking this position rather than saying, hang on, what's going on in Austria should never be exported here and we should all be standing up for our fundamental freedoms?
I think because there's an orthodoxy and a narrative that is being pushed, and certain things are to be talked about and other things are to be ignored, that a country like Austria is talking about full lockdown again, obviously, but mandating vaccines, and that Germany and other Central European countries look certain to follow suit. I find that terrifying, but most terrifying of all is never mind the mainstream media. It's the fact that our leaders are not speaking out in condemnation, or at the very least saying, let's think about this. But
Sajid Javid at the weekend, Neil, just said, "Oh, that's Austria's decision to make." I mean, hang on a moment. Yeah. No.
We have to, as I believe, I don't believe that the people of Great Britain would tolerate this mandated vaccines. I think whatever else is happening on mainland Europe, I do not believe that the British people would allow it to happen here. Now, I'm not sure how you go about making not allowing something actually manifest itself in reality, but I don't think it would be allowed here, not by the people. I was listening to you earlier and you were talking about whether or not Boris Johnson was, a great leader. I think the fundamental difference between Boris Johnson and someone like Margaret Thatcher and someone like Churchill is that he is devoid of principle. He's a clever man, but he's dedicated only to self-aggrandizement. And I believe that he picked up the torch of Brexit only because he thought that it was a way to get into the hearts of a majority. And so indeed it did. It secured him his 80-seat majority. But I don't believe it was because it matched with his principles. I just think he stuck a wet finger up in the air, saw which way the wind was blowing, and decided that was the way that he would face. He is not a principled politician. That is the fundamental difference between someone like him and someone like Churchill and someone like Thatcher. Whether you like those other politicians or not, they were people of conviction and people of principle. He is not, and I don't think he's unique in that. I think they're a product of the political class and the political climate that has developed here, during a large part of my adult life. I think the career politicians, the professional politicians, they're driven by opinion polls and what they think will get them into power and keep them in power, which is profoundly different from having principles and seeking to stand by them. What's with the situation in Austria and Germany what you've got there are people like Johnson and Gove and the rest of them are looking on to see if it looks like being something that's a vote winner or something that will secure their position. So they don't have a principle about it. If they did, they would have already got up in Parliament or somewhere else and said, we are opposed to what the Austrian
exactly, and they're never coming here and don't even consider bringing them here.
The fact that they haven't. The fact that they haven't done that tells you all you need to know. That tells you that they're watching it. They're watching it and they've got it in their back pocket as something that they would do if they thought it would secure their position. They are not principled people.
Neil Oliver, a very principled man, fighting for freedom every Saturday at 7 o'clock here on GB News. Thank you so much, Neil. We'll speak again next week. Still to come this hour, Laura Dodsworth is uncancelled, asking, will the mainstream media lead us into COVID dystopia? Why has World War II hero Winston Churchill come under attack from, believe it or not, the Imperial War Museum? Plus, has the country fallen out of love with Adele after her weird Hollywood transformation? She's gone quite lovey, right? And also that decision to share intimate details of her private life, including conversations with her son on her new album 30. We'll debate those headlines and more of today's top stories in the media buzz. Plus, we'll also bring you a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages too, and reveal tonight's Greatest Britain and Uni and Jackass. This is Dan Wootton tonight, but first the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Good evening. Mourners have been paying their respects to the murdered politician Sir David Amess today. The father of five's coffin was draped in a Union flag and carried to his funeral by Southend firefighters. Sir David was stabbed to death while holding a surgery in Leigh-on-Sea in October. The Home Secretary today said there's no silver bullet for solving the migrant crisis. Priti Patel was taking urgent questions from MPs in the Commons over the increasing numbers of people crossing the English Channel. Shadow Home Secretary Nick Thomas-Simons accused Ms Patel of empty rhetoric and broken promises. 3 times as many people have come to the UK this year than in 2020.
There's no single solution to fixing a global migration crisis. The Nationalising Borders Bill going through Parliament will actually make life harder for the criminal gangs behind these crossings, and all members should be supporting that. That means people smugglers could face a life behind bars, and importantly, this will break the deadly business models of these smugglers. And in addition to that, Mr Speaker, of course, we want to make sure that the United Kingdom is less attractive to illegal migrants.
The government is facing a backbench rebellion over caps on care costs. MPs on both sides are saying the plans in the Health and Care Bill are unfair, but Boris Johnson's heading off criticism, saying the reforms are incredibly generous. In the United States, at least 5 people have died and more than 40 more have been injured after a car ploughed into a Christmas parade. 39-year-old Darrell Brooks has been charged with intentional homicide. Police say he was fleeing a domestic disturbance when he allegedly crashed into the crowd. The victims are aged between 52 and 81, and at least 10 children are in intensive care in hospital. Here, the energy provider Bulb is going into special administration. The company's blaming the rising cost of gas prices and a challenging market. It says it'll still provide a normal service to its 1.7 million customers. More than 20 providers have collapsed in recent months. And lastly, gender categories are to be scrapped at the next Brit Awards. Artist of the Year and International Artist of the Year will replace Best Female or Best Male categories. The show's organisers say they want to focus on artists' work instead of how they identify. You're up to date. I'm back in an hour. Now back to Dan.
And we're back, and it's time for tomorrow's news tonight in our Media Buzz. First look now at the front pages hot off the press. The Metro leads with the fallout from the Prime Minister's rambling speech at the CBI today, dubbing it a Peppa's Pig's ear after he mentioned the children's cartoon in that address. They report that Boris Johnson has been accused of losing the plot after the cringeworthy performance and that it has sparked concerns over his leadership. The Daily Telegraph leads with Lord Frost's warning to the government: cut taxes or risk Brexit failing. The Brexit minister told a conference he attended with Bojo that Britain could not carry on as it did before the referendum and must cut taxes and reduce regulation. His intervention came amid growing reports of concerns over a drift in Number 10, compounded by a chaotic speech given by the PM earlier today. The Eye leads with new advice that people should take a COVID test before Christmas shopping. The government has changed its guidelines and warns that being in busy indoor places with limited fresh air carries higher risk for catching and passing on the virus. It comes as ministers and scientists believe that England can avoid stricter measures for mask wearing and working from home despite a rise in cases across the continent. My superstar panel are back with me. Tonight it is the Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, senior reporter at the Eye newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and the social commentator Esther Kraku. The Imperial War Museum has been forced to apologise for a woke anti-Winston Churchill rap performed at the end of a 2-minute silence on Remembrance Day. Members of the public, not surprisingly, walked out in disgust during the youth rap group's performance, which accused the World War II hero of being responsible for a famine in 1943, which killed 3 million Bengalis. Remember, that is historically disputed. Remembrance and War Museum staff were also reportedly left in shock as the group went on to scream, yes, scream to the shocked audience that remembrance occasions forget people of colour. Imperial War Museum bosses apologised for the incident and said that it wasn't an appropriate occasion for the rap to have been performed. But Esther Kraku, this is too little too late, isn't it? The Imperial War Museum has gone woke here. And also, what the hell is that institution doing allowing this attack of Winston Churchill on Remembrance Sunday?
Did anyone who okayed this? Like,
Well, the bosses did. Apparently, they've performed there before.
Okay. I'm open to conversation. I absolutely love having conversations around, different contributions during the World Wars. However, I don't think that is the appropriate time or place to do that. And really, I read that one of the members of the public that walked out actually said that he was his wife was in the armed forces and she was disgusted by it because she just thought it was such an inappropriate time and place to do that. And even if what they're saying, what they're contending has some merit, that's not the place or time to do that. That's completely inappropriate. It's completely out of order, and it actually makes their case really redundant, really.
I mean, Carol, this performance organised by workshop leaders MC, Angel and Ahmed Days. I would say, if you want to have a discussion about Churchill's role in World War II, organise a seminar. To do it on Remembrance Sunday, when relatives of folk who've lost their lives go to pay tribute, feels really wrong.
It's a slap in the face for the vets who were there. It's an appalling disrespect of our war dead. This is a bunch of teenagers who, in their short lives, will not have achieved very much, will certainly never have faced war, will certainly never fought in a war, and yet they are denigrating a man who saved this country from Hitler and from the Nazis and from fascism. And I'm sure fascism is a word they use quite a lot in their daily lives without any idea what it actually means. And it really makes me cross. And and so while I'm cross with them, I'm crosser with the bosses of the Imperial War Museum, because they should have vetted this before it ever went on. And they made some apology, some weak apology. It's not good enough, frankly. They should have known what was in that speech. Remembrance Sunday is not the day for this. And as you say, people walked out. Someone should lose their job over this. The director of the Imperial War Museum should lose his or her job over this. It's appalling.
Benjamin Butterworth, do you think this was an appropriate performance on Remembrance Sunday?
No. I mean, clearly, this is not the way to end a 2-minute silence because you're dealing with all those questions about the war. And I think one of the people that was there made a good point that, the nature of the rap, the questions they raise about Churchill's legacy, about the effects of war, about race, they're all legitimate to debate. And I think this was a part of a scheme that the Imperial War Museum does, where 11 to 18-year-olds are invited in to do these kind of creative projects. I actually think that, in a way, Carol is right, because whichever boss did didn't listen to this or did listen to it and let it through. I feel very sorry for these kids because, you know, they've been landed in terrible hot water. They've been sort of humiliated. They were offended the people in the room. And actually...
They need to grow up. They need to grow up and take some responsibility. Because there is just a desire, isn't there, Carol? There is a desire amongst the woke left to bring down Churchill. It's almost become a craven obsession of the woke left.
And I would love to just get those kids in a room and ask them 4 or 5 questions about what they think Churchill did.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure they don't know their history. I'm pretty sure they've heard what they repeat from other people.
Of course they have.
And apparently they use the word...
they've taken such an interest at that age, you know, that they're questioning their history.
Hold on.
Without the facts.
I'm sorry, and during the rap, which if you can even call it that, they were using the term like white privilege. I'm like, do you know how many white people died during the First and Second World War? Are you joking?
I know.
Exactly.
I know. And actually, the Bengali famine, if you study it, there were loads of reasons why Churchill couldn't send as much rice right at the beginning of the famine. And remember, in the end, Carol, he shipped tons and tons over. But remember, we were in the middle of fighting a war as well, and the British people had to be fed back home too.
And people also forget that there was a point in the war when Churchill was alone in the government in wanting to carry on fighting the Nazis.
Yeah.
There were people in our government who wanted to appease the Nazis, who wanted to give in. And Churchill said, you know, he was very much alone when he made that decision. It could have been disastrous. It wasn't, as it turned out, thank God. But, you know, we could have, this country could have been very different today. And those kids would not have been able to do what they do. But to me, I just think it's a shame, because I just think it's their lack of knowledge. They've jumped on the woke bandwagon, and everyone who lived 70, 80, 90 years ago is obviously a racist. And you know, everyone was a racist back then.
I know.
You know.
It's despicable. And as someone whose grandparents fought in World War II and who absolutely adored Winston Churchill, I found this despicable. Also despicable, a newly launched Advent calendar by a woke chocolate company, which is facing backlash because, wait for it, it doesn't mention the words Christmas or Advent once. So this is Tony's Chocolonely, and it said it wants its £13, what a rip-off, countdown calendar to be accessible to all who celebrate the festive season, but it's been slammed as completely missing the meaning of Christmas. The Dutch brand has also been accused of going eco-woke with the calendar, even coming in plastic-free packaging, with shoppers urged to use the tray to grow plants. I mean, look, Esther, this is one of these really annoying, very woke companies that doesn't just want to sell me chocolate, it wants to sell me a message. And let me tell you, just like Ben and Jerry's, I will be boycotting this chocolate brand because I just want chocolate. I don't want a message. And by the way, Christmas is about celebrating the Christian faith and the birth of Jesus Christ.
Festive season. It's such a vague no word. It doesn't even mean anything. And could you imagine if you went to the UAE during an Islamic holiday and said the festive season slightly may or may not be related to the Prophet Muhammad? Like, are you joking?
Yeah.
You could not go to any other part of the world and be offended.
Benjamin, that's such a good point, isn't
other
it?
religions.
Why do we have to make Christmas inclusive?
Look, I've got no problem with using the word Christmas. I'm pretty sure the word Christmas is rarely related to Christianity or that celebration in most of its use, because, no, but in the reality, it's always talking about sort of various things you can buy. I find it, you know, you call this a woke company. This Tony's chocolate brand gives a lot more money back to the farmers back in some of the poorest parts of the world. They exist in order to help the farmers, and that's why it's more expensive.
Well, that's not
they're not like Ben and Jerry's. They didn't sort of have an existing brand and then sort of latch it on something else. And if they don't have plastic on their wrapping, that's a good thing. I mean, I find it crazy that you denigrate them for that. And ultimately, you know, we both believe in capitalism in different ways, rather different ways. But do you know what? If you don't want it, don't buy it.
Well, Dan is right. When you buy a piece of chocolate, which is usually terrible in those advent calendars, by the way, it's usually cheap, horrible stuff, you don't want a message as well. I don't want to be given messages by people that I don't believe in, that I don't respect. I just want to buy me chocolate.
Well, I do respect the farmers for growing the cocoa.
But they're not doing the advert.
This is a company that was created to give a lot more money back to those communities, and that's why people buy it.
I completely get that. They're very much, you know, they're passionate about the fair trade, but that's not the argument we're having here. How can you have a Christmas-themed chocolate product without the word Christmas?
And I'm sorry, to me, that makes them the definition of woke idiots, no matter what else they're doing with their company, and I will not be supporting them or buying them, as is my right. I'm not encouraging a boycott, just as is my right. I'm not going to buy chocolate from a company that makes an advent calendar that doesn't celebrate Christmas. It is ridiculous. Now, look, we all want to be original on our wedding day, don't we? But I reckon this TikTok user may take the cake for the most unique wedding vehicle, with all the groomsmen being ferried to church on a tractor in Ireland.
There's John Paul coming. And John Paul, give it the blow. Oh, John. Oh, John, give it.
Oh, that's great, isn't it, Carol?
What was that TV series that, with the Welsh girl and the big girl, Ruth?
Oh, Gavin and Stacey.
She went to her wedding in a truck like that, and she sat in the back. Remember? In a truck full of hay. She's the first to do it.
Caroline, Benjamin Butterworth, Esther Krakow, do stand by, because coming up is Adele, a hypocrite for pleading for privacy while featuring conversations about divorce with her son on her new album. And will new gender-neutral categories at the Brit Awards shut out female artists? We'll tackle those topics in the Media Buzz and take a look as tomorrow's newspaper front pages are delivered.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
More on the Media Buzz now. My very naughty superstar panel back with me. The Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, senior reporter at the newspaper Benjamin Butterworth. He's also been described as the most woke man in Britain.
By you.
Plus the social commentator Esther Krakow. Now, speaking of woke, the new uber woke bosses of the Brit Awards have today made the unconscionable decision to axe the soul category for British female solo artists. So this is really crucial to learn that in 41 ceremonies, only 2 groups with female members have ever won the Best British Group gong, and just a quarter of British album winners have been female, with only Dua Lipa, Adele and Emily Sandé taking the prize in the past decade. So as I wrote in my column for the Mail Online today, it makes me laugh when people say I'm being hysterical for pointing out the woke mob are advocating the complete erasure of both sex and gender from mainstream society, when the rhetoric from Brit bosses today proves that is exactly what's happening. So check this out from Polydor co-president Tom Much. He's the king of woke in the music industry. He runs the Brit Awards now, and he says it is important that the Brits continue to evolve and aim to be as inclusive as possible. It feels completely the right time to celebrate the achievements of artists for the music that they create and the work that they do, irrespective of gender. The decision comes after Triple Brit winner Sam Smith declared they were non-binary. And it has seen the introduction of 4 new categories in a bid to prevent a ceremony of all male winners. But in reality, Benjamin Butterworth, what this is going to do is mean that far fewer women win Brit Awards.
I mean, I think that's unlikely because...
No, it's not.
Basically,
Did you see my facts?
I read your piece earlier today.
OK, because if you take... Sorry to interrupt, but if you take the best British album category, for example, over the history of the Brits, only a quarter have been won by women. And in the past decade, that's only been because of Adele, Emily Sandé and Dua Lipa. All of these major categories are dominated by male rock bands and male singers.
I mean, most of the best-selling artists in the world are women and have been for some years. The music industry is definitely dominated by women. And look, you know, the question that we're dealing with here is that whether you should divide it by male and female. You wrongly stated they've got rid of the female category. That's obviously not true. They've just got rid of the male and female category. And they now have, I think...
Well, they have got rid of the female.
It's an artist award and an international artist
didn't wrongly
award.
state anything. They've got rid of the female
category. Well, you neglected
category.
to say that they'd also got rid of the male category, which is significant.
But the male category
now, look,
is basically...
now, you know, Dan, when artists compete every single week in the charts, I assume if you believe there should be a male and a female Brit Award prize, you must believe there should be a male and a female top 40 each.
No, I absolutely don't.
Can I just point out another fact, which backs up exactly what Dan's saying? That musical festivals in their lineup every year, there's been a massive imbalance for years because less than a quarter of music festivals' headline acts are women. And the bosses of those festivals say it's because there aren't enough women's acts. And that's exactly what's going to happen here. You say some of the best acts in the world are women. We have Adele. She's risen up recently. There's a handful.
We'll talk about her in a moment.
Yeah, you've got Adele, Taylor Swift, Ariana Grande, Lady Gaga, Billie Eilish. You know, they are the best-selling artists in the world. They're overwhelming women.
They're also American, most of them.
You know, the idea... hang on, this isn't sport. You know, there isn't a difference in some level of strength or specific skill that you can achieve or funding. You know, this is something where men and women and other genders...
Do you not see what's going to happen? So just say there's one year where 6 women win awards. There's going to be complaints everywhere because the guys haven't won. This is going to bring... This is going to bring... You know, people...
But Carol, sadly, that won't happen. I promise you. I've looked at these awards closely for many years. And the blokes dominate. And Esther, I also want to discuss how this represents a slippery slope for society as well. Because what's next? Let me tell you, the Oscars, the Academy Awards will end up getting rid of their Best Actress category. Then schools will come under pressure to no longer have head girls. And why are we doing this? Because of a tiny, extreme minority, which seems to be represented in the music industry by Sam Smith and Demi Lovato, who claim that they are non-binary. I would say to Sam Smith and Demi Lovato, you can enter whatever category you want. If you want to be in British female one year, you can. If you think your next album is a more blokey album, go to the British male. But to change all of this history, which has created artists like Annie Lennox, like Kate Bush, like Ellie Goulding, is sick.
No, but it's certainly elevated them. One thing this annoying aspect of this movement is doing is actually making the public resent it more. Yeah. Because we still live our lives. 99% of all normal people in society still live our lives according to male and female. Yeah, I'm saying normal because we still live our lives categorized by male and female. You go to a hospital, he's going to say you are male.
That's not a problem.
We cannot change. Change the structure of society.
Don't use that.
You can't change the structure of society because of Demi Lovato and Sam Smith. They're happy to live their lives. They're very successful. They're very talented. But we cannot change the structure of society because
you're not changing the structure of society.
But also, one thing I need to point out is
how the Brit Awards hand their awards out doesn't affect any of us. Let's be honest. No, but you're not going to win them anytime soon.
If you're too stupid to understand that pop culture absolutely influences very seriously what goes on in society, then I worry for you.
Well, I tell you what, if it encourages people to be tolerant of non-binary people, then that's a good thing.
Who's intolerant of them?
I don't see any reason
what it's actually doing is erasing females and women from society.
Can I just say something that you may not understand, right? The female experience, and I can't believe I'm saying this, is actually quite differently expressed in music, right? If you completely remove that category, you remove how women express... No, I'm sorry, but women and men experience life in different ways, from everything from romance to family to... And that is how they express it in the music.
And they should be compared against each other. I completely agree.
Well, in that case, you've got two very experienced and successful journalists. Have you ever gone to the Press Awards, the one for journalists, the equivalent for journalists? You've been nominated for Showbiz Journalist of the Year. I've never seen you go, oh, there should be a male showbiz journalist and
Is
a
he
female
expressing
showbiz
his writing
journalist
as a
of the
male
year.
or just as a journalist?
I've never heard you say that.
No, but Benjamin,
Answer the question.
Part
Answer
of
the
this
question,
is
because
about...
it's a very similar...
Well, no, but there are journalism awards specifically for women, and I support that. But this is also about history and about heritage.
If you don't believe that the awards in your industry, for which you've been recognised, you've never said there should be one for men and one for women. So why should it be different for someone that
But
sings
in
and
this
someone that writes?
industry, in the music industry,
journalism is dominated by men.
In the music industry, no, journalism is not dominated by men. That's absolutely not true. Journalism is the one profession that for the last 20, 30 years has had equal amounts of women. That's just simply not true. And there's always been equal pay for men and women too. But anyway, apart from that, in this industry, there has always been awards for men and for women.
Yeah,
and that's how it's been.
we're stripping that away
so we're taking
to
it away.
appeal
We're
to an
making
extreme
a
minority.
conscious
But look, I want to speak about the woman who we just mentioned, Adele. Because, you know, on Friday, she graced the world with her first new album in nearly 6 years. And then last night, in an ITV special, she had quite an incredible onstage moment where she was reunited with her favourite teacher. Take a look.
I'm so proud of you. I didn't know that you were coming. It's okay, it's supposed to be a surprise. Hi, how are you? Oh, you look exactly the same. You look exactly the same. Are you still teaching?
No.
What do you do? Are you just dancing?
No, I'm just looking after my family.
Oh my
just
God.
dancing.
Oh, sorry.
Don't cry. Thank you.
Now, that was a beautiful moment, but lots of commentators have started turning on Adele for the way that she shared her personal life on the new album. So Loose Women's Janet Street Porter accused the star of gushing tears on tap every hour and speaking about her personal life to shift product. And Piers Morgan criticised the new album, saying Adele crossed a line by exposing her 9-year-old son Angelo's innermost feelings about her 2019 divorce from charity boss Simon Konecki in the track My Little Love. So, Benjamin, it feels like the public still love Adele. A lot of the media class are turning on her. I have to say, I've always been a big fan, but I felt very uncomfortable listening to this album and that track because Adele, for years and years and years, has told people like me, stay away from my son. Do not write about him. Do not picture him. I want to protect this boy. I want him to have a private, normal life. And listening to that album, Benjamin, she has actually published real conversations that she's had with this young boy about the divorce that she's experienced from her father. And I'm sorry, I love Adele, but she's become the hypocrite in chief.
I mean, look, you know, Adele won a 5-figure lawsuit after photographs were taken of her son only a couple of years ago. So that's how seriously she claimed to take his privacy. And when I listened to this album, and it's as beautiful as Adele always is, when it got to this song, I hadn't realised this was coming up. These are voice notes that she recorded of her crying, of her son, who was 6 or 7 years old in the recordings, now 9 years old, very upset. And I felt so uncomfortable to be listening to a boy that isn't old enough to know that the world is listening. Although she clearly made the decision to put this out for a product that she's making tens of millions of pounds off in the next year or so, he can't possibly have known what's going on. I felt
well, they remain
I think
close,
she crossed a line.
but she's also crossed a line, I would say, in a lot of the things that she said about her ex-husband, Esther, as well.
I don't listen to Adele because I think it's sad single girl music and I don't understand how she...
And you're not a sad single girl.
She's always getting played. I don't understand it. She's beautiful. Anyway, but I'm wondering if her ex-husband approved this because I feel like that's really crossing a line. I don't care whether you approve what she said about him because that's her own business.
But about the child.
This is a minor involved. Like, come on. But also, I just think celebrity culture is constantly moving to this oversharing point. And I realize after every time a female celebrity in particular has a trauma or something like that, she feels like part of her process, especially healing publicly, is by oversharing. right? It always happens. It's very uncomfortable.
I don't understand you guys.
Carol, why is everyone turning on Adele?
The one thing about her songs, every song with her is a story. And if you looked at that audience last night when she was singing the songs about her personal life, they were completely wrapped, because everything she said in those songs about the divorce, about when a relationship's breaking up, every person in that audience has experienced that at some point. And what makes her real to me, I mean, I hated all the celebrity nonsense in that last night, but anyway, what makes her songs real, what makes me cry, what makes my heart hurt when I hear her sing, is because it's so personal.
Do you not think she crossed the line with her son?
No, I don't. I really don't.
His voice, Carol.
But her son is not going to be. Her son is not going to be paraded on television. He's going to be protected at home. No one particularly knows what he looks like, or who he is, or what he does, or where he goes. Come on,
Carol, my point to you now, as a journalist, is if your newspaper, the Daily Express, were to run photographs of this young boy, Angelo, who Adele has chosen to put on her album, surely she could no longer say, you've got to worry about this boy's privacy.
No, I think that's entirely different. I think what she was singing about was the experience of the breakup and what had happened. I think that's different from exposing your son to cameras and being in the streets and putting them up and using them as a show thing. That's
final word, Benjamin.
A photo of the son with her mum going down the street isn't nearly as intimate as him sobbing with his mother in private recordings. I think she crossed a line, and I'm confident she'll live to regret it.
Benjamin Butterworth, Carol Malone, Esther Kraku, do stand by. But coming up in Uncancelled, will the mainstream media lead us into COVID dystopia? Laura Dodsworth, author of A State of Fair, joins me later. But next, is it fair to cut out loved ones over COVID views? That's the fate suffered by the rock star Eric Clapton. I'll put that to my panel and we'll debate more of the day's top stories in the Media Buzz in just a moment.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Let's return to tomorrow's news tonight in our Media Buzz. And more front pages have just been delivered. The Guardian declares that Boris Johnson is losing the confidence of the Tory party. They wish. Of course they do. The Guardian says Conservative MPs increasingly worried about the PM's competence and drive after his speech at the CBI today. Plus, the NHS is to offer therapy, exercise and mindfulness for mild depression before antidepressants, according to new guidelines. The Independent also leads with that Boris speech, which they describe as shambolic. Frustrated Tories have claimed the botched address highlights the wider problems with the PM. And the Daily Star has a typically animated front page after Boris name-checked Peppa Pig in that speech, calling the PM a pork pie short of a picnic. Plus, housework could save your life. I think I'll take that risk, actually, like to avoid housework, to be totally honest with you. I've got my superstar panel back with me now. It is the Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, senior reporter at the I newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and the social commentator Esther Kraku. Now, Eric Clapton, one of my favourites, my dad's all-time favourite actually, famed rocker, has said that his views on COVID and the vaccines have really sadly cost him relationships with close family and friends. Speaking on the Defender podcast with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Clapton said his daughters see him as a crackpot and have distanced themselves from him. Have a listen.
Over the last year, there's been a lot of disappearing, a lot of dust around with people moving away quite quickly. And it does kind of refine, it has for me refined the kind of friendships I have. And it's dwindled down to the people that I obviously really need and love. And inside my family, that became quite pivotal. With young kids, I've got teenage girls and an older girl who's in her 30s. And they've all had to kind of give me leeway because I haven't been able to convince any of them. I think my wife is now seeing it the same way as me, but most of them, they've always thought I'm a crackpot anyway, because I do things that are extremely unusual on any kind of level, my pastimes and my tastes.
Clapton is double vaccinated, by the way, and he said the rejection as well as scrutiny from the media has reaffirmed his belief. Does raise the question, though, is it fair to ditch loved ones, even family members, Carol, if you have a disagreement over the COVID
If only I could have heard what he said there, but I think I read some stuff today, and I'm loving the argument that he's decided that because he's getting criticised for his views, he must be absolutely right, which is nonsense. Did you say his daughter disowned him? I'm not surprised, because he said in public that he was worried about his daughter's fertility. And as I've said before, there's not a single piece of data. In fact, there's a professor called Dr. Edward Morris, president of the Royal College of Obstetricians. He says there is no biologically plausible mechanism by which current vaccines would have any impact on women's fertility. So he's peddling misinformation there. That website, he's on that Defender website, is owned by Robert F. Kennedy, who is also peddling massive information. And my worry is that, Clapton is a man of influence, and what he says would mean something to a lot of people. And yet he's peddling all this crazy stuff, and he's going on websites that are peddling stuff that it can cause autism in children, the vaccine, and that it affects fertility. These crazy conspiracy theories, and people will be listening to him. And if his own daughter is actually saying to him, "I don't want to talk to you anymore," I get why people are. This guy is 76 years old. He's been double vaccinated, but even now, if he gets it, he could be in trouble. And yet he's encouraging other people, it sounds to me, not to.
I know it sounds terrible, but I found it really funny that he said he was worried about his daughter's fertility. And then, do you remember when Nicki Minaj said a friend of a friend in Trinidad was worried that he got the vaccine and his testicles?
Oh, yes.
Hello, yes.
Oh, yes, I remember.
Which, of course, was proven to be completely made up.
Yes.
The government of that country looked into it, and there was no evidence that anyone had that issue.
Benjamin, my view on this, though, is that no matter what the political views are of my close family and my close friends, I do not walk away from them. I'm happy to have a disagreement. I'm happy to have the discussion. But I hate the culture that we are creating, especially around COVID, by the way, which is that if you're not with me, you're against me, and you're going to be cut from my social group. And actually, we saw this with folk like you over Brexit as well. A lot of left-wing Ramonas saying, "Oh, if you're still my Facebook friend and you voted Leave, delete yourself, please." This is intolerance.
Well, you show your compassion by calling me a left-wing Ramona and you lot during that.
Look, but you're still my friend.
But look, don't reveal the secret.
Probably not by the end of the night, Dan. I mean,
it's been a long long show.
I mean, I think you're wrong on everything. I think you're ridiculously woke. You are a Ramona, and you got that completely wrong.
He called you a maniac earlier in the show.
But I'm not going to disown you because of your ridiculous
He's going to educate you.
Look, I'm going to educate exactly.
But with the best...
Oh, gosh, come here. There are two questions here. One is, because I don't think that the question about the vaccine is simply a different political view. You know, do I have friends that are crazy, right-wing? Yes, I do, and you're sat there. But do you know what? I think when it comes to the vaccine and you having maybe Christmas dinner, who you're inviting in with different generations of your family, Eric Clapton is obviously 76 years old. I think people are entitled to say, I don't want unvaccinated people at the Christmas dinner table.
Yeah.
What if that person is coming in with herpes?
Because
that makes me want to disown you, mate,
But more importantly, although Benjamin Butterworth is a person of influence, he's not a man with the kind of influence that Clapton has. And Clapton is actually bankrolling anti-vaccine music. Now, that is putting your influence out there. So is he a hypocrite because he's had the vaccine and yet he's bankrolling anti-vaxxers? Why? Why is he doing that? And he's sounding a bit like someone who's lost the plot. He sounds like an old bloke who's lost the plot.
Oh, Carol.
But he does.
Let's lighten the mood.
He could have slipped through dead.
A TikTok user has gone viral after revealing, and this is something I worry about a lot, actually, weirdly. She swallowed one of her AirPod headphones after mistaking it for ibuprofen.
Proven 800 in one hand. And my fucking AirPod, my left earbud in the other, and I went to go put it in here. And I threw something back and took my water bottle, took a sip, and then realized it wasn't ibuprofen, and I tried puking it up, and it won't come out.
So then this pops up on my phone. An AirPod Pro has been moving with you for a while. The owner can see its location. You can play a sound to find it. I tried that, guys. Anyway, yeah. So an update. Here it is. It's definitely into my stomach. I'm waiting for my doctor to call me back. It's been not 24 hours yet, but I still haven't passed it. So far, so good. I worked all day.
Now, luckily, the 27-year-old from Boston later confirmed she has safely passed the device since the video without causing any damage to herself. Oh, no, Carol. She said she had just let it go. She had just let it go.
Never seen those kind of hysterics.
I would never put that on the internet.
That's not the
Hell no.
We've all
never know anything
before.
about what goes on in my stomach.
Speaking of oversharing, I think that is firmly in
Yes. Sure. Carol Malone, Benjamin Butterworth, Esther Krakow, do stand by because in just a moment I'm going to get my superstar panel to nominate their Greatest Britain and Union Jackass, but guess what? I get to choose the winner. But next, in Uncancelled, a state affair author Laura Dodsworth on Austria's slip towards COVID totalitarianism. That's after we take a look at what's coming up in tomorrow's show.
Coming up Tuesday on Dan Wootton Tonight, does Boris Johnson really have the bottle to end the migrant crisis? And if not, is the Conservative Party at stake? The journalist and former MEP Patrick O'Flynn voices his doubts. Plus, GB News' own Nigel Farage will give his verdict in What the Farage. Has the Jeremy Kyle scandal destroyed the tabloid talk show for good? An icon in the field, US broadcaster Sally Jessy Raphael joins me. Darren Grimes is the outsider, plus my superstar panel are Rebecca Reed, Calvin Robinson and Dawn Neeson. That's Dan Wootton Tonight from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Monday to Thursday on GB News.
But time now for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. Tonight, Laura Dodsworth, author of A State of Fear, is asking why the mainstream media machine appears to be on board with the kind of totalitarian behaviour we've seen in Austria. Laura, welcome. I wanted to talk to you tonight because what's going on in Europe is so disturbing. And then for some reason, here in the UK, you've got most broadcasters acting as if this is totally normal. What's your take on it, having done all of this research about the behavioural influences used by government over the pandemic?
It's such a strange situation. I mean, in Austria, they had a lockdown for the unvaccinated. And now they're proposing that from early next year that everybody must be vaccinated. So they'll be mandating vaccines for everyone. It's not quite clear how that would be enforced. Germany has said the same. There's another lockdown for the unvaccinated in Slovakia. There's some really very extreme authoritarian measures afoot. And actually, far from condemning those measures or even asking questions about the ethics and the morality, it feels like there are politicians and media who are cheerleading. The protests are consistently described as being far right, which is really strange because I don't think this is a partisan response. There's nothing particularly far right about wanting your ability to work or go to the shops, not to be dependent on whether you have a medical intervention. Austria's interior minister has described there's being increased radicalisation among the population in Austria. But, you know, they've locked down the unvaccinated and now they're saying they all have to have a vaccination, and forced vaccinations would encourage radicalisation, I think. So the media coverage has been quite inflammatory. The Telegraph, which has had very balanced coverage throughout COVID, I think, had a headline which was rage across Europe. And you see lots of these words used, words that denote anger and violence and war sometimes, because they're very clickbaity. So I think there's a few things going on in the media. The clickbait headlines encourage the readers, which in a very fast-paced digital environment is part of the problem. I think there's been a lot of activist journalism, so journalists are quite keen to undermine responses that they think are slow, that might have contributed towards deaths. There's been some truly terrible reporting of data. Perhaps we could come on to that in a bit more detail, because there's a couple of classic examples recently. Fear sells. That's been one problem. Journalists themselves seem to be quite addicted to the fear. And we also have to be aware of quite subtle ways in which propaganda works through the media. On a slightly
I mean, Laura,
different...
for me, it's the normalisation, though, if that is a word, from our broadcast media about what Austria is doing, about what the Netherlands is doing, about what Germany is doing. I mean, I played a clip earlier in the show of the Jeremy Vine show discussing bringing this Austrian policy here and saying, oh, the biggest problem is that the police wouldn't have the time to patrol it properly, to patrol the unvaccinated. But don't worry, the snitch culture worked so well during lockdown, we can rely on neighbours snitching on the unvaccinated who leave their houses. And I'm just thinking, there's a panel of 4 people, not one person is actually saying, that's not British. That's not democratic. Have we been so conditioned, Laura, over the past 20 months by all of the government propaganda, I would say, they might say public health advertising, to actually think in a way that we would have a couple of years ago decided is really extreme?
Well, the media keeps telling us that we're in a permanent crisis, and then being told that we're in a permanent crisis justifies the increasing and continuing impositions upon people. You know, it was 3 weeks to flatten the curve, and now YouGov are polling on behalf of the government whether we should lock down again, whether that's all of us on all the unvaccinated. They've asked both. And it does feel like we're on a merry-go-round of panic. And biased media coverage and threats. It's a vicious circle. It's just continuing. I think there's actually genuinely quite a lot of fear on the behalf of some journalists and maybe even the politicians. I know of somebody very senior in the media who said privately they would like to force everybody who's unvaccinated to be jabbed. So I think sometimes people can't separate their own personal fears and bias from the balanced coverage that they should be promoting. Last year was, last year, I don't think there really is going to be any doubt when people look back on this that we've just lived through quite a serious propaganda event. You know, propaganda is biased information in order to pursue a political end. I think you mentioned totalitarianism before, and you did in your monologue the other night, which was excellent, by the way. I mean, we don't live in a totalitarian state. We do live in a democracy, but totalitarianism is also characterised by the idea that the citizen should be totally subject to absolute state authority. And there are some quite worrying signs about that. And the role of the media at a time like this should be to challenge, it should be to check the data, it should be to question the data, ask very difficult questions
so what
of
data
politicians.
are you concerned about, Laura?
Well, just recently, the ONS released some data that said that if you were unvaccinated, you were 32 times more likely to die than if you were vaccinated. So the media's kind of leapt on this. In fact, on the Jeremy Vine show, they got it wrong and said it was 32,000 times, which was a little bit of a multiplication there. But even if you just look at that data, it's actually quite misleading because it's taking a time series from the 2nd of January when there was a big spike in deaths, but almost nobody was vaccinated. Then that compares with the deaths of the vaccinated across a time period when people die far less from respiratory illness in the spring and the summer, and that really skews the results. We're talking about the media here, but one thing that actually is quite hopeful is fragmentation of the media and disruption of the media. So there's a news site called Daily Skeptic run by Toby Young, and that brought up that issue with the ONS's time series quite early. And there's a former ONS employee called James Wells. He's on Twitter. So, again, you can actually find lots of information by sifting through on social media. And he's complained to the National Statistics Authority about this use of data. Also, quite recently, the NHS boss, Amanda Pritchard, said that there were 14 times as many COVID patients in November this year compared with November last year in hospital. That was completely, wildly wrong. And it was picked up by Sky, ITV, the I newspaper, among others. I think it shows probably confirmation bias.
Across this data, and of course, I know you will be doing so, and I will too on this show. Laura Dodsworth, author of A State of Fear. Thank you for joining us on Uncancelled tonight. But it's time now to reveal today's greatest Britain and Union Jackass. With me to nominate my superstar panel, the columnist and broadcaster Carol Malone is back, senior reporter at the I newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and the social commentator Esther Krakook. Carol, who's your greatest Britain nominee?
Well, after earlier this evening, I'm not going to win tonight. Mine was Adele. And I was just saying what I loved about her last night, that every song told a story. I love the fact that she's been living in LA for a while, but she's still very British. I like the fact that she's remembered that. And I think she's kind of real, and I like the fact that she's real. And I think she's a credit to this country. Basically.
Benjamin Butterworth, your greatest Britain nominee.
Mine is a teenage girl called Pollyanna Hope, and she lost her leg in a bus accident aged 2, and then over the weekend she performed in New York with a prosthetic leg, and she's worked so hard. She always wanted to be a ballerina, and she managed to perform with the most beautiful ballet set. She's the daughter of the Telegraph journalist Christopher Hope, for those that read the Telegraph, and it just moved me so much because the tragedy of losing your leg when you're so young and to still achieve your dream, I really thought that just brought joy to my heart.
Oh, what a wonderful girl, what a wonderful girl. And Esther Krakook, your greatest Britain.
My greatest Britain are the protesters around Europe that are fighting this medical apartheid that they're trying to force down on people just making autonomous decisions over their bodies. I know the rest of the panel won't agree with me, but I just think I can't...
Well, no, Esther, you're right. You are completely right. And that is the greatest Britain today. All of these protesters who are standing up, I would say they need to do it peacefully, but they're standing up despite all of these, all of the people who are ignoring this in the mainstream media. I think you're completely right. Let's move on, though. Union Jackass time. Carol Malone, who's yours?
Mine is the corporation, the BBC, which has refused to allow the Queen and the rest of the royal family to preview a documentary that was going out tonight, probably gone out now, called The Princess and the Press. And the BBC are alleging in this that Harry and Wills were briefing the media about each other when all this row was going on. This is important because the BBC... after their shame over the Bashir in the Diana interview, they're not letting the Queen view this. They're not letting the royal family have a right of reply, which is against every journalistic principle that exists. And the royal family are now saying they're going to have the lawyers at the ready, and I hope they do sue the BBC over this.
I'm going to reserve judgment on this because I actually gave some interviews for this show. But what's interesting is that it was actually over a year ago. So I wasn't able to comment on what went on with Martin Bashir and the BBC. So I'm going to watch and I'm going to reserve judgment. So we may talk about it on the show tomorrow night. Benjamin Butterworth, your Union Jackass.
My Union Jackass is Adele. I love her generally speaking, but do you know what? Putting your 6 or 7-year-old son's personal, intimate thoughts on their parents' divorce and his pain at his crying mummy is twisted. It is too far, and she made a terrible misjudgment.
Esther Crack,
I would
your
agree
Union
that,
Jackass
she should be
nominee. Who are you nominating, Esther? You can't pick Adele. Benjamin has. So who
I
are you
know,
gonna
but I would
nominate?
agree if it wasn't Boris Johnson.
Oh,
he is a regular feature.
He's the
for
best
his
PM since
Peppa-
Churchill, according to Trump.
Let's not be hasty now. If it wasn't for his Peppa Pig, porky, almost steak-like speech at CBI, I mean, I think he's losing the plot. I don't know what's going on with him. I think maybe all those green gases are getting to his head and, you know, pushing up consumer prices for everyone, or not lowering taxes, something. I don't know. The Conservative ghost is coming to bite him in the bum. But he's clearly losing it, and he needs to get the plot together, so.
Well, look, this is tonight a rare win for Benjamin Butterworth, because I think my Union Jackass tonight has to be Adele.
Yeah.
I love the woman. You know, I've celebrated her on this show so much. But you cannot say that you want to protect the privacy of your young son and then put conversations of him about the divorce you've had with your husband on the record. No. Fabulous superstar panel tonight. Thank you to Carol Malone, Benjamin Butterworth and Esther Kraku. Thank you most, though, for your company. I'm back tomorrow night at 9. Headliners is next. Good night.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello again. High pressure is keeping things fine. During the next 24 hours for most of us, there'll be frost and fog, especially in the south on Tuesday morning, but replaced soon enough by sunny spells. Here's the area of high pressure. It's keeping Atlantic weather fronts and low pressure at bay for the time being, centred over Ireland, but around the periphery of that high, some additional cloud for northern and eastern parts of the UK. And you can see that across northern Scotland and increasingly Northern Ireland, central and southern Scotland, northern England, seeing those patches of cloud overnight. More solid cloud coming into eastern England, perhaps floating into central southern England for a time. But away from the cloud, temperatures falling, a touch of frost, some fog patches to begin things on Tuesday. The fog gets replaced by sunny spells, and then for the vast majority it's another fine day. A lot of dry weather. Really the only noticeable rain will be across northern and western Scotland, where we keep those drizzly showers. But even the showers in Kent will tend to stay offshore, I think, throughout much of the day, so drier here. And for many it's bright, but I think there'll be areas of cloud floating about, so not entirely sunny. The best of the sunshine through these central and southwestern areas, temperatures reaching 10 Celsius. Into Tuesday evening, where we get those clear skies across southern parts of the country, with light winds as well. Some fairly dense fog patches will form. Could cause some problems on the roads first thing Wednesday. But away from the fog, areas of cloud here and there, and some more persistent rain arriving into Scotland, and by dawn, Northern Ireland as well. Now this weather front will sink south on Wednesday morning, so an hour or two of rain for Scotland and Northern Ireland. It then arrives into Northern England and North Wales by lunchtime. To the north, brighter skies, but blustery showers follow, and colder air digs south, so that these showers will be falling as snow over the hills of Scotland. Thursday and Friday bring with them plenty more cold weather and increasingly unsettled weather.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m.